a Motorsport Podcast Network production.
Hey everyone, welcome along. This is Mini Metal, powered by the Diecast Detective on the V8 Sleuth podcast. This is our chance to take a look at the world of model cars. It's something that we are really into. We love Bathurst, we love touring cars, we love muscle cars, we love supercars. We love them all, and there's a special reason why we're going to take a look at a couple of very themed topics at Bathurst in upcoming episodes, because there's amazing history around the real cars and there's amazing history around the little cars, particularly the 1/18 scale, which is a little bit more my speed. Now, you might be wondering who is and what is the Diecast Detective. Now, we're going to get into that on this episode as we take a look at the Bathurst Great Race cars, the 60s and the 70s. It's Falcons, it's Bonaros, it's Minis. There's all sorts of cool stuff to go through, but we need to talk to the detective himself. The sleuth and the detective in the same place at the same time. We are not the same person, are we, detective?
We are not, Aaron. Thank you very much for having me on.
Now, we've got a bit to talk about. Before we get into talking about some of these great model cars, we need to explain what is Diecast Detective. And I can absolutely say that it is a partner now of V8 Sleuth. But before you were a partner, I'm a site user. I am a subscriber. I pay my money. It's the only way that I can track what model cars that I do and don't have, what they're worth, how they're trending. Give us the background to this, what it is. I know it's a very long question, but it's a very long answer because there's a lot of elements to what is a thing that I haven't seen anybody else do.
Well, that's right, Aaron. So we are Australia's home of model values. So diecast is in our name, but we do track models across all different materials. So diecast, resin, composite. And we do cover every scale, but our specialty is 1 to 18 because this is the heart of the collector market and the scale that generates the most sales activity locally. So we are a website, and it came about through a need to better support collectors with the pricing of models and the managing of their growing collections. So it was during COVID the idea came to life. As we all know, the market exploded as people were sitting at home, idle. They jumped online, they started buying up models and growing their collections, and that surge pushed prices up. But as the lockdowns were lifted, some of the prices softened off, making it a lot harder for people to know what their models were actually worth. So that created a few problems. Collections were growing and getting harder to manage. Collectors weren't sure how to price models, whether they were buying or selling. And when it came to insurance, many risked undervaluing their collections due to price fluctuations. So we set out to solve 3 key problems. 1, a way for collectors to properly save their collections digitally. Secondly, access to up-to-date values of every model so they always know what a single model or their entire collection is worth, and also to help establish stability in pricing through transparency. And thirdly, to help ensure that they have the right level of insurance cover to protect what they've built. So anyone can jump onto the website, diecastdetective.com.au, and look up the value of individual models. But becoming a Diecast Detective member unlocks powerful tools to help collectors manage and analyze their collections.
So you actually use the data from eBay and the like to track the values of specific cars. So you can actually say, right, that car has gone for a big price. We're seeing that car trending upwards in the last, say, 3 years, or this particular model is a sleeper, or this one's really not worth a pinch of anything at the moment because no one kind of wants one. There's this is built on data, and this is built on is it something like 13 or 14,000 individual models that you now have in this system, and it's growing every week?
That's right, Aaron. We currently have over 13,500 models in the database, and that is growing every day. We also have over 85,000 confirmed sales. So this is real data. I think a key point to make for collectors is that the prices that we generate are not based on opinion. They are based on data. So what sets us apart is that the Diecast Detective price, which is our measurement of value for every model, is determined via advanced statistical analysis and predictive modeling based on historical sales and market trends. It is not opinion. So We know price is very emotive in the industry. We see it in the Facebook comments sections, but we are not about opinion here. It is purely about the data.
So there's no telling me's dreaming for the jousting sticks going on when it comes to the detective. This is all data-driven.
That's right. I mean, we'll never tell anyone that they should price something in a particular way. It's the seller's prerogative. But what we can do is bring that transparency to the industry to say, hey, based on historical sales and our trend analysis, this is the current market value for any given model in those 13,500 models that we have.
Yeah, it's a great thing that I've not experienced it anywhere before, someone that's come up with this. So hence why once we started talking and looking and learning more about what you've been doing, it made logical sense to tie things together with V8 Sleuth, because there's so many elements that click together. And because I cannot for the life of me try to do a spreadsheet to put all my model cars into it. So the great thing is with this program, when you subscribe to it, you can actually get into the back end and just search for the model cars that you have. Oh, I've got I just did it today, the 2024 Chico Bathurst Erebus Camaro. Type in 2024 Kostecki, up it comes, click on it, add it to my virtual collection. Done. So now I remember that I've got that one somewhere on the shelf somewhere, and I don't have to try to figure out which one I do or I don't have. Now, what our listeners are into are model cars, both real cars, small cars, and everywhere in between. But we thought with Bathurst on the horizon, we do a few episodes of Mini Metal, and on this one we want to focus on the 60s and the 70s at Bathurst. So I'm sure there's lots of our listeners who are thinking, right, I better get my list out of what I've got and what I don't got, of what's valuable, what's going up, what's going down. So if we rewind back here, Detective, to if we're just looking at the 60s and 70s, the great race at Bathurst, the Bathurst Armstrong 500, Gallagher 500, Hardy Ferodo 500, and then Hardy Ferodo 1000 and James Hardy 1000. That's a mouthful. Although James Hardy 1000 came in the 80s. We'll do that on another episode. What is the very first Bathurst Great Race model that was ever released? Because there's been literally hundreds of them, but what was the car that started it all? I actually don't know.
Well, there were 118 models produced from this 60s and 70s era, and the very first one was the 1971 Moffat XY GTHO Phase 3 winning car.
One of the all-time muscle car classics.
Legendary. And this is the very first race car ever produced by Bianchi. So not only the first Bathurst model from this era, but the first race car model that Bianchi ever produced in 1998. And this model is an interesting one because it actually plays a small but important role in the story of what is arguably Australia's most legendary model car, the twin-mirror XY GZHO Phase 3 road car. So the history here is that in July 1998, the very first Bianchi release was the Track Red GTHO street car, and it sold out straight away. And the problem was the next car Bianchi were going to release was the 71 Bathurst winner, but it was still 10 weeks away. So with nothing left in the stores to show to prospective buyers, the white XY GTHO was sent as a display-only model to distributors. The problem was it was sent in both single and twin mirror form, and the single mirror version being based on the 71 Moffat body shell, hence the connection. But it wasn't known that there were both a single mirror and a twin mirror version of this car that went out, and nor were they meant to be sold to the public. But look, it's a complicated story, and you can read all about it on the Diecast Detective website. But that's just a little link back to the 71 Moffat winner.
So is the first the best? Is the first the one that you really want to have? Is that something that is still a sought-after car, being because it's the first one, or because it's Alan Moffat, or because it's, the Phase 3 GTHO, one of the iconic muscle cars, if not the most iconic muscle car of all time?
Well, let's look at the data. So Classic Collectibles released this same car in 2006, so 8 years later. And that car, the classic version, actually has a higher Diecast Detective price at present than the Bianchi car. Now, that's despite the Bianchi car having the signed Moffat COA. So I would have to say on that basis that no, there isn't really huge appeal for it being the first one. If anything, there does seem to be more interest in the later classic release of the same car. But I think long term, Aaron, I think the signed COA is going to ensure that the Bianchi version does grow probably more into the future than the classic version.
Yeah, totally understandable. Totally understandable. What's the most valuable race-winning Bathurst model of the 60s and 70s? Surely Brock, Moffat, with their victories in that period, they've got to be up there somewhere. But is it a car that we might not have even considered that is the car that everyone needs to just double-check their shelves or their Diecast Detective portfolio to see whether they own this one?
Yeah, look, Brock should be all over this one, but it's actually the 1963 Bob Jane Harry Firth Cortina, which was produced by Apex Replicas. Now, this is arguably one of the most polarizing models in the whole industry. Being a Bathurst winner, there's high expectations for the quality of the model, and unfortunately, this one's a little bit patchy. The quality concerns do drive its volatile pricing too, with some collectors paying up to $2,025 for this model. But
and not everyone needs to run. Don't go running to the bank just yet because you've heard that on the Mini Metal podcast, everyone.
But others, Aaron, have paid under $400 for it. So that volatility really comes down to, I guess, what people are willing to pay at the time for the model. And the divide is further highlighted by the current Diecast Detective price, which for the used version sits at almost twice the value of new at $1,360. So that is number one by some margin. But I mentioned Brock, and there is another contender, but it's only under special circumstances. And that's his 72 maiden victory car, the first model in the Bianchi Peter Brock collection, released in 99. Now, this one is subject to wild price swings in and of itself. For example, recently one sold for $600 and 3 days later another sold for $231, same condition. So that doesn't sound expensive, but put Brock's signature on the car, and of the 7 sales that have a signature on the model, the average for a used version is $285, but the average for new is $1,700 with a peak price of $2,000, and that one is trending upwards. So if you've got a signed Brock 72 Bianchi Bathurst winner, you are potentially looking at a small gold mine there.
So what is the difference in the way you categorize this stuff between used and new? Is new never been out of the box, never been opened? Is used that it's been put on a cabinet and it's been displayed? What's the difference in the way that you guys categorize all that?
So this might differ from other people's or even eBay's opinion of how it should be, but we have to draw the line somewhere. And for us, new means undisplayed. So that does mean the box can be open, but it means not displayed. And it's as simple as that. Okay.
So for those who've got their cars out and maybe just double check that, yep, no, it's still in there, it's all okay, it's non-damaged when it's turned up in the post or the model shop has sold it to you, you're allowed to have looked in to check that it's there and it's still deemed new.
Most certainly. But what I will say is that we have just launched some new features to the website, and this allows collectors to have better insight into the values of models that have certain exceptions. So whether it be, like the example of the Brock 72 car, whether it be signed, or whether the models are loose without a box, or those missing a COA, or models that are damaged or modified, we actually have those classifications within each model's product card on the website. So you can check to see the value of signed models, damaged models, of just the box of the car, or for cars that are loose. All those different permutations, we do have those exceptions in the data as well.
The detective never sleeps. There's always some form of difference between all of these different cars and possibilities and outcomes. So we've talked about the first model that was released. We've talked about the most valuable of this period of the 60s and 70s at Bathurst. Least valuable race-winning model. I would have guessed it was one of those Cortinas from the early period of the race, but it's actually not. It's actually a V8 Falcon muscle car that's leading the way there, though, which is quite staggering, but I'm sure there's a reason why.
This is incredible, Aaron. Before we dived into the data, we would have gone with one of the early Cortinas as well, not the Apex one, but the 64 or 65. But it's not the case. It is the 1970 Moffat XW GTHO Falcon.
Really? Well, why so? That's staggering.
It beggars belief because this is actually the first release in the Bianchi Alan Moffat collection, meaning signed COA and part of that collection. Now, it was released in 2000 for $166, and that's roughly where its value sits today for a used version. A new one in undisplay condition is around $220, but still, it's beneath where the 64 and 65 Cortinas are. So the reason for it, there isn't a clear reason for this, Aaron, and in some cases, and we've got all the data, we cannot see a clear reason why this one is so far below where we would expect it.
And it's not like they made a million of them, like that. It's not total saturation.
No, they did do a fair number of them, and Classics released another 6,000 in 2007. But that Classics car is currently going for $100 more than the Bianchi version. So for some reason, there is an aversion to paying big money for the Bianchi car. Now, sagging doors is something that we have seen on the early Bianchi cars, but quite honestly, I don't believe that that is driving the low value on this one. So maybe this is a bit of a sleeper.
Yeah, I'm staggered by that Alan Moffat's first Bathurst winning Falcon is of that period of the 60s and 70s, the least valuable at the moment. Maybe in time that will change, but let's look to help collectors with a bit of value here, because it's usually the race-winning cars that hold the big numbers. Not all of them, but some of them. But in this period, I'm sure that there's a bunch of cars that, you know, they might not have won. They weren't even on the podium. They might not have even finished the race, but those cars tend to get made in smaller numbers. So what are the most, and I've got a little list here that I've worked through and I'm trying to figure it out, but the most valuable non-winning cars are all hardtop Falcons. Is that the key to this, of why these cars are in that value space? Is it the era? Because they're cars that never even got near a sniff of the podium in those particular years.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Aaron. And I think what is so great about collecting is that we've all got different tastes in cars. Some people collect all the Bathurst winners and others aren't so bothered by it. But it's the fact that these non-winning cars are so highly valued and so highly sought after that I think just makes it so much more exciting that they're not winners. So, yeah, I think the draw of a hardtop Falcon can't be ignored. I mean, they're just such beastly looking cars, aren't they? They really have great presence on the shelf and obviously on the racetrack. So in third place, it's the 76 XB Falcon of John Goss and Jim Richards. There are only 500 of these made by Classic Collectibles. This was Richo's first Bathurst in a Ford, I believe, after 2 years in the Rod Coppins Tirana, which Auto Art did produce. And this car rarely comes up for sale. We're talking 2 to maybe 3 times a year. And there was a 9-month gap between its 2 most recent sales. So its current value is $620 for new or $520 for used. And that's down about 2.5% year to date. Cracking looking car.
So second is the Brian Burt Ford from 73. So that's the John French, Bobby Skelton car that Auto Art produced. But the one that got the lead on the list I've got here, and you have to tell me why and how, and maybe it's because it maybe it had a good ear for a future earning capability price. You'll get it when I tell you what car it is. The Pioneer Falcon XB-GT of Fred Gibson and Ron Dixon from 77 is the most valuable non-winning car of the period as a model.
That's right. And
wow.
It has the highest peak price of any non-winning car. So at $1,600. So it's currently around the $1,000 mark. But this one, with that really iconic yellow livery with the big ear on the rear quarter, I mean, it's a stunning looking car. Don't think it had any sort of success, anything even approaching success, but 564 made, and when these come up, they move so quickly, and even at $1,000, they're highly sought after.
Wow! Before I got given this list of some of these answers, and I don't have them all, but that one really did get my eye. Let's go on and keep it moving, Detective, because Bathurst models from this period that have lost their shine. I find it hard to think that any of these classic muscle cars from this period have lost their zhuzh, so to speak, in the collector space. But Brock leads categories in all areas at Bathurst in history, but in model cars, it would seem that one of his more forgotten HDT Tiranas is not really frothing collectors up and is the top of this list.
Yeah, the 70 LC Tirana that he shared with Bob Morris. It's fallen 32% this year. Now, this does form part of the Peter Brock collection, but it doesn't come with a signed COA. So there's a strong belief that might have something to do with it, but there's no clear reason for it. But a 32% drop year to date is extremely significant.
Yeah, it's a strange one. But having said that, of all of his Bathurst cars, it wasn't a contender for victory. The Tirana was new at the time. He wasn't exactly the megastar that he became later on, so it's kind of a forgotten car in his career. Hard to imagine that the first ever Bathurst winning Holden has lost its shine. Can you please explain how the Bruce McPhee Barry Mulholland car is second on this list?
Well, this one's actually quite straightforward to explain. This was once valued around $800, but in April last year, Classic Collectibles announced they'd be re-releasing it. And you can basically map its decline in value from that point through to its release in October 2024, and obviously through to now. It's simply the fact that there are more cheaper, newer versions of the same car available to the marketplace. And we're now looking at low to mid 300s for the auto art version. So yeah, bring in a remake and watch the values of the original cars drop like a stone.
Yeah, we have seen that in plenty of cases over the years, and even currently that there's models that Classic Collectibles are producing that auto art perhaps made Bianchi back in the 2000s, and it would seem that it either helps really lower the price of the originals, or it, as you mentioned before with that Moffat car, it can go the other way on occasion, which is a little bit hard to track. But I guess when you've got the data, you can kind of see what, where, why, and how of which one, in which way they're trending.
Indeed, we can, and that one's has dropped 35% this year. So it is a seismic drop for what has been a very expensive model.
Right. Now, the other one that's lost its shine is the Moffat Bathurst winning 1970 car. We kind of talked about that before, so that sort of makes sense that it's lost its shine and it's now in that least valuable race winning model list. So let's look at what's on the rise. Let's look at the stocks going up here. We sound like we're downcast detective merchants here, Detective. So let's give the collectors some positivity and something to go rifling through their collections for to see what's going up in value. And it's no surprise that there's a Brock car topping this list. And it's an anniversary this year because 1975, Gownhindhoff L34 Tirana. It's 2025 this year. And of course, that's the very first win at Bathurst for a V8 powered Holden Tirana. And it's amazingly on the rise. How can a Brock car that's been around for so long be on the way up here at the moment?
Well, we've dived into the data on this one, and what it does show is that it was undervalued at the start of the year. And the way we determine that is we looked at the Classic Collectibles version of the same car and its value at the start of the year. And the Auto Art version was significantly below that. The Auto Art car has now surged 37% this year and has now surpassed the Classics version, which we would expect given it's got the Brock signed COA. So you could say it was undervalued at the start of the year and it's appropriately valued now with its new value sitting just south of $600 and the used value around $430. So that one's actually quite easy to explain.
Okay, what about the number 2 on the list is the Bruce McPhee Ford Factory XWGDHO Classic Collectibles version from the 1970 race. Why is that on the rise? Is it because it's a factory Falcon? It's kind of been a bit of a sleeper. What's the story there?
Oh, this is a sleeper for sure, Aaron. This is one that probably many collectors don't even know exists. It trades very, very infrequently. There were only 500 made, so you're starting from a very low base there. We're not sure why it spiked at this point in time, but there's every reason for it to perform better than what it has. It's Bruce McPhee's third straight Bathurst podium, so there is significance to this car. Its value is up close to 30% this year alone, and it's is only $50 off its peak price. So that one is definitely one to watch moving forward.
And the other one too that's third on this list of on the rise, and remember that we're just focusing on the 60s and 70s in this episode. We will do 80s and 90s in another episode, and we will even get into the noughties at some point in a future episode of Mini Metal as well. But 1978, Breville, Ron Hodson, Channel 7, Bobby Morris, John Fitzpatrick, 78 Tirana A9X is on that list too. And there is a bunch of variations of that car of the era. There was the Alan Moffat Amps car version and various iterations of sort of the same period and the same sort of looking car. But if you want to have one of them, or if you do have one of them, the one to have is the Bathurst 78 car.
Yeah, this is another sleeper, and I think the reason it is a sleeper is because people mistake it either for the 79 ATCC winner or Moffat's Amps car, but it's not. It is a separate model. It is the Morris Fitzpatrick Bathurst car, and sales are really scarce, with only 2 recorded sales since October last year, but one of them did set a new record at $500, driving overall growth for the year above 30%. So that one, definitely one to watch. It's
all right. I don't think that one's in my collection, but the other thing about doing these episodes too is that it's going to allow collectors to look at what they've got and kind of take stock of their, I guess, collecting situation and values and insurance values. And it's actually, being a user of the site, I've found that it's made it so much easier to track and trace what I've got and what I don't got, because you can also put in alerts to keep an eye out there of whatever pops up for sale. But there's other opportunities. I mean, it's not just eBay where these things sell. There's all sorts of markets and shows and private sales and model shops. And this is sort of going to help collectors keep an eye on not just what they've got, but what is worth maybe investing in that they get for a decent price now. That's not crazy, but the trend is going the right way, that in a year or 2 or 3, they might be well placed with their investment. Because for many people, model cars, yes, they're passion, yes, they're a collectible, but I know that there's people out there who treat them as a bit of an investment as well, because at the end of the day, if you're going to spend some money on something you enjoy and it can go up in value, it ticks both boxes.
That's man maths, isn't it, Aaron?
I think so. Well, you're on board with this, aren't you? You know,
absolutely. We can justify it that way for sure. But look, we understand not everyone's in it for the money, but I think the one thing that we are all conscious of is that we have spent a lot of money on these things, and we need to ensure that they are adequately insured. And that's part of what we've tried to deliver upon with Diecast Detective. The system automatically values your collection and also assigns an insurance value based on the current market data. So you can override that. Let's say, for example, you pay more than what the current value is for that model. You can adjust it, but as a default setting, your whole collection is assigned an insurance value automatically, just so that if you don't bother to do it yourself, there's always that value there and you know how you should be covered.
Now, usually the thing that helps value is, and you've talked about a couple of these examples, where there's not many of them to start with. If there's not many to start with, there's not many to sell or buy or be traded. So what's the lowest production runs of this era for Bathurst winning car and non-Bathurst winning cars? Because that's where a lot of the value tends to come from, that there's just not many of a certain car to start with.
Yeah, that's right, Aaron. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, of course, but in this case, the 1963 Cortina of Firth makes another appearance, and it is the number one lowest production run Bathurst winning model at 1,002. In terms of non-winners, there's a list of 7 LH and LX Tiranas from Classic Collectibles, each a 400 unit run. And we probably don't need to go through each of those, but they do include the 75 Morris Gardner, second place car, and the 78 Grice Leffler, second place LX. So 400 is the lowest production run from the 1960s and 1970s.
And the one that probably catches my eye there is the Peter Jansen, Larry Perkins Cadbury Schweppes car from 79, which is a cool car. And also the Bob Forbes Wayne Nagus car that was a runner-up in 74 in the wet. That's also in that list of 400 produced. So not many of those cars floating around, so keep your eyes out for those ones. What are the ones, though, that pop up the most? You've talked a bit about how your data can show through Diecast Detective how often some of these cars pop up for sale. But what are the ones that are always there, that there seems to be a big supply of, a big demand for, what's popping up regularly?
Is it any surprise that Brock dominates this category?
Probably not, no.
So in third place, it's his 75 winner, the one we've referenced previously, the Auto Art version. So there was 6,000 made of this car, so plenty in circulation. We have 95 sales recorded and 14 for this year alone. In second place is his 72, the inaugural victory for him, the Bianchi car that we've referenced before. Got 106 sales on record for that, 14 this year. There were 12,000 made of that car, so it stands to reason that it's near the top of the list. And number one is the 1979 Brock Richards Bathurst winner. That's the Auto Art version, 136 sales and 22 this year. 11,000 were made of that car. And I think the draw for that one in particular, in addition to being obviously a signed COA model, is that it's got the driver figurine. That's the one to have.
Yeah, and that's a rarity in terms of Bathurst cars, because it's not exactly like it's dime a dozen that there's figurines with all of these things. It's you get the car and you get the car, and that's pretty much it. But that is a rarity. So if they're the ones that are popping up regularly, I'm sure there are cars that aren't popping up regularly. So are they the high-value winning cars, or are they the nondescript cars that just the demand's not there and people aren't really the non-famous drivers, inconsequential cars in the history of the race? Surely that's what dictates what is not popping up for sale or is not being popped up that anyone's looking to buy.
A little from column A and a little from column B. So in terms of the non-winning cars, I think it's definitely the case of being a bit of a nondescript car. Having said that, the 1971 Leo Gagin Peter Brown E38 Charger, that's the white one, is a stunning looking car. That was a classic collectibles release, and it's been 480 days since that model last sold. So that's May 2024, and it sold for $300. So non-expensive model, well off its peak of $600. 1,200 produced at that one, not especially rare, but just a nondescript model, I would have to say. It's not a Falcon, it's not a Monaro. Not that people don't love Chargers, but they don't hold the sway that Falcons and Monaros do from the era.
Yeah, don't quite have that same gravitas that I guess the winners write history, don't they? And Holden and Ford were the ones doing all the winning. But in terms of the winning cars, what are people hanging on to? Because we've talked about the ones that are going bonkers. We've talked about the ones that are perhaps bombing. But what are the ones that people look to be hanging on to because you're not seeing them? And we should point out too, where's this data coming from? What are you sourcing this data from? Is it purely eBay? Are there other factors? Are there other elements that come into this?
There are, Aaron. So we source data from everywhere that there is a sale made. So auction houses, eBay is the number one source because, let's be honest, they've got the market, they've got the volume. We also have private sales reported to us. We also see private auctions as well. Anywhere where there's a sale and it is reported to us and is able to be verified, that goes into the database. So in terms of the Bathurst winners, well, it's the 1977 Moffat X XC Falcon by Classic Collectibles. Now, this model is known for major quality issues, especially with the boot. It has had 6 sales this year, but only one of those examples was undamaged. So that was way back in January, making that the number one, I guess you could say, the longest time between sales Bathurst winning model that there is. And a clean example of that is a very expensive car. It's $600 for new or $400 for used, but good luck finding one.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of an effort. Now, it's not all about Fords and Holdens in the 60s and 70s. It nearly was, but not quite, as we mentioned, the Charger. But what are some of the other cars of interest that are floating around there that have been made as models that people should perhaps keep an eye on? And they don't have to be the big ticket names or the big ticket teams to have some relevance or be at least interesting. That, look, there's something out there for everybody, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
What's the best thing about the industry is people with different tastes. And I think having something in your collection that stands out as being a bit different. We've all got Falcons and Monaros and Commodores in our collections, but a Mini Cooper S, how cool would that look in amongst all those big American and Australian cars? And we're talking specifically here about the 1966 Gallagher 500 winning Mini Cooper S of Altonan and Holden. So this is the one produced by Kyosho for Bianchi. And it came in two versions. There was the Kyosho branded release and a Bianchi branded release that included a signed COA by Bob Holden. The Kyosho version is exceptionally rare. It was intended for overseas markets, whereas for the Australian market, the Bianchi version was produced with 3,000 units. Small in size, it really does look, it does stand out incredibly in any collection, but it is the only non-Holden or Ford winning model from the era, and used to be a 600 plus model. Now we're looking at high 400s for that one, so I think that is a standout model in any collection.
Well, even when it wasn't a Holden or Ford winner, it was still a Holden winner because a bloke called Holden was driving the Mini that won the race.
Oh, that's right.
So it's for the Holden fans, they'll probably claim that one as well out there. Another one of note, we talked about the Bob Morris Peter Brock 70 HDT Tirana XU1, but a lot of people won't know that there was another HDT car produced that perhaps doesn't have the same level, but it was important because it was the Sandra Bennett Christine Cole car. Christine, of course, Christine Gibson got married to Fred in the years that followed. That's an interesting one too, because for a long time they had, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, the best or one of the best finishes for an all-female combo in the race until the days of the Castrol Cougars and Mel Price and Karen Brewer, who still hold that record. But that's a HDT car that I think a lot of people forget.
Indeed. It's a very forgotten about model. And I believe that they even beat a young Peter Brock and Colin Bond in the 1970 race in that car. So quite an achievement. So that one was produced by Auto Art in 2010. It was a limited run of just 702 models, rarely seen on the market. We see maybe 2 to 3 sales a year, and values sit around the $300 mark for new and $200 for used, and a peak sale price at $375. So if you've got the Harvey Norman Supergirls FGX Falcon and have plans to get the Castrol Cougars Commodore being released at the Diecast Expo, this is one to add to that trio, or to make it a trio, of all-female lineups.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And that Castrol Cougars car is coming at the Diecast Model Expo, which we're in September. It's coming up very, very soon. Come along. It's going to be a great one. There's a bunch of special guests going to be there. John Bowers making an appearance. Mel Price is making an appearance. I think Matt Payne's coming along. David Reynolds as well. I'm going to be there. Are you going to be there? Are you coming along? Are you bringing your detective self along?
Diecast Detective is a sponsor of the event, so we will be there in one way, shape or form.
If you want more details, by the way, listeners, get on the website, jump on our site, have a bit of a Google. You'll be able to order your details. Order your tickets and get further details on that event. It's in Caroline Springs, outskirts of Melbourne, September 2021 weekend. So get along. It's coming up pretty soon. There's one car, though, that has probably been replayed more often than any other car's highlight from this 60s, 70s period. We haven't talked about it. We haven't touched it. It's pretty much going to come up here at the end of our episode. But the Bill Brown rollover car is one that is an amazing piece of Bathurst history. And even though he's not a world-famous superstar driving name, a lot of people who might not know who he was have seen that vision, know that car, and know that crash.
Oh, it's absolutely iconic, isn't it? And the car itself, as a model, looks fantastic in its yellow livery. So can definitely encourage people to add this one to their collection. Auto Art released it in 2008, and it has got a Bill Brown signed COA. So that's a little something special. It's not an expensive car. At the moment, the Diecast Detective price shows new examples leading the way at just under $300 and $200 for used. So, what a piece of Bathurst history.
It's not a bad price, actually. That's a pretty good one. There's always something, too, that is undervalued, something that you go, huh? With a capital, huh? So how is it that a car driven by a Formula One world champion, perhaps the greatest driver also to never win the world championship alongside him, that featured in one of the most iconic moments of the race in this period, with a COA that is signed by both of those gents who are both no longer with us, how on earth can the 1976 Jack Brabham Sterling Moss Tirana L34 not have the value that you would think it would? I am staggered by this. Please try and explain to me why this one is not at the top of any of these lists of non-winners or anything else.
It's incredible, Aaron. Two of the greatest drivers of the last 100 years in a car together at Bathurst. A great-looking car too, I think, the 2SM liveried LH Tirana. And we're seeing values in the 200s for this car with a dual-signed COA.
What? Did you just say in the 200s? Is your data machine broken, or what are people doing?
We had to check numerous times to make sure it was correct, but it is true. They are, the most recent sale was $259, and the peak price is just under $600. Sorry, with the exception of one outlier sale from an auction house at 808. But yeah, no private sale or eBay sale has ever broken 600 for this racing royalty car. And it's inexplicable, maybe just an underappreciation for what these gents have achieved, and maybe even just a little bit of the fact people don't know this car exists. There were only 1,350. Turnover volumes aren't, there's a few sales every year, so it's not difficult to get hold of, but the value is just not there, Aaron.
I'm amazed. Shocked is probably the word. But anyway, that is a good opportunity for collectors to get out there and get among it and see if they can snap one of those up somewhere, because you're right, it's a cool-looking car. Iconic moment when it was stalled on the grid and ran by the Dolomite in 76. And, of course, two absolute legends that have world significance beyond just what happened at Bathurst that weekend. That's definitely one of those postscripts in their careers that were otherwise full of amazing other stuff. But, yeah, I'm quite staggered by that. But we've learnt something on this episode of Mini Metal, and that's the aim of the game with these episodes. But we're learning it with data, with what really is the real cost, what is really the value, and what really is the market telling us. And that's why we wanted to do these episodes, because we love collecting, we love models, we love history, we love Bathurst. And with Bathurst coming up, we thought we'd do a bit of a Bathurst-flavoured show. But we've talked a fair bit about the hows and whys of Diecast Detective, and as a subscriber, I'm definitely getting the value out of this. I'm definitely tracking the collection. I'm definitely able to look at what I need to be adding. Do tell Detective, our fine listeners, how can you become a Diecast Detective subscriber? Do they need to sign up? Do they need to do a secret handshake? Do they need to be able to run 100 meters in under 12 seconds? What's the story here? How do you get on board with this?
So visit www.diecastdetective.com.au and click the sign up button, and you can start your 14-day free trial. No credit card required, no catch. You can test out all of the features of the website for free, and then make your decision at the end of the 14 days. But we're sure that you'll get the most out of it in that time, and you will love to continue to use the ever-growing number of features that we have and we continue to add to on the website. So happy collecting.
There's no resting for the Detective. And one of the features that I particularly like recently, that I did send you a note and say, hey, can you add this in? And you wrote back and said, we've already done it, was that you could put a spot in for each of the models to put what number your COA, your certificate of authenticity or authentication, depending on which side of the fence you're from, you could put the number in. So if some people do have numbers that are quite special or rare or unique. Others just, for insurance purposes, and others just like to know which one have I got of X car. That's in there. There's a whole pile of options and possibilities that you can definitely track. We have done the 60s and 70s. The best part is that we're going to come back soon and do another episode of this with Mini Metal, and we're going to focus on the 80s and the 90s. So if you're listening and you're keen on that era and you're wondering about anything relating to cars of that era, by all means, send us a note via the V8 Sleuth social media accounts or via our website. We've got a contact page on the form there. Send us some notes. Get it in before we record that episode, because we'd love to hear what people think about the cars of the 80s and 90s when it comes to Bathurst models. And maybe there's a couple there that people want to know about that we might be able to provide a couple of answers on. A little bit of a taste tester to get people in and rolling in Diecast Detective land. Detective, you have done a super job today with your mysterious voice and ways. Well played. We'll do the 80s and 90s again soon. Sound like a plan?
It sounds like a great plan, Aaron. 80s and 90s, what an era. Can't wait for it.
I'm going to take that bit of audio where you said 80s and 90s because of your almost FM voice, and we're going to put golden hits in front of it, and we're going to make an ad for sure. We could do love song dedications out of this podcast with your voice like this.
Got a head for radio, Aaron.
Hey, takes one to know one. That's definitely me as well. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. That is Mini Metal, powered by the Diecast Detective on the V8 Sleuth podcast. Your chance to learn a bit more about the world of model cars. That sound you can hear is everyone scurrying away now to go check their collections and see what they do and don't got. The good news is we're going to do this again. Thanks for joining us. Mini Metal will be back very soon on the V8 Sleuth podcast. Catch you soon. Happy collecting.